Yeah, I think we're continuing the trend that we saw in the last round of decks that we don't really expect too often in Historic. Last round we had 5-color Niv against Golgari midrange. This time 4-color midrange against Boros Cycling. And this cycling deck in Historic looks quite a lot different than what we're used to in Standard. Part of that is because they do have access to the 8 extra cycling lands in the Forgotten Cave and the Secluded Steppe. Having lands the cycle for 1 mana in this deck makes you that much more explosive and lets you get away with more considering your mana base is part of your game plan now. But the big addition to this deck that we just see drawn for Luis is the one that came in Historic Anthology 4, the Flameblade Adept. Previously, this deck just had the Fox as its
Hmm.
big first turn play. This is how all the best hands from the deck starts. Now with the Flameblade Adept, they've essentially doubled the number of 1-drops they have access to, which means that their explosive game plan can happen about twice as often, which is what they're looking for.
Yeah, so a super cool addition to the archetype, and you'll see Flameblade Adept triggering on each cycle, getting that extra power, and having Menace too, able to sneak through some blockers. But Andrea Mengucci is having none of that, as Aethergust is going to send this poor little Flamebait to the top of the library, or to the bottom, depending where Luis wants to put it.
Yeah, bottom likely. I don't think that we're past the point where this adept is going to steal the game, and I think Luis is just looking for Zenith Flare, looking for more. Admittedly, this matchup is pretty tough for Luis. A lot of the cards in Andrea's deck line up really well against what Luis is bringing to the table. The one card that Luis has in his deck that does do a great job in this matchup is Hollow One. Hollow One falls into that sweet spot where it dodges the Ether Gust, it dodges the eliminate, it dodges most of the removal that Andrea is bringing to the table. It only really dies to Binding the Old Gods and Languish. So if Luis was able to get one or maybe even two quick hollow ones on the table, that would have been a good chance at getting a foothold in this game.
And you said Andrea's deck kind of matches everything that Luis is doing, and I would just want to point out that Andrea's deck basically just kills everything, but you know what's not going to cause death and destruction? A bunch of lands, as he has drawn plenty of them.
Yeah, contrary to Luis, who is really happy seeing as many cycle lands as his deck is willing to give him in the early turns, Andrea is not. He doesn't have all the time in the world. Can't just sit there and keep cycling these lands. He needs more to be happening with his draw steps, and at the moment it's not. So he could just suddenly find himself losing this game if Luis just cycles a few times and gets at least one of these foxes out of the range of something like Languish. The number of draws Andrea has available to him really get cut down by a lot.
So Luis applying more pressure here, getting both foxes down on the battlefield. Footfall Crater cycling away. And we're going to see good old Hollow One hit the board here too, potentially. Or we're just happy with the threats that we've established.
I would guess, considering the board wipes available to Andrea are Languish and Shadow's Verdict, no extinction events in this deck to
Mm-hmm.
punish another odd creature on the battlefield, Luis will absolutely deploy the Hollow One here. Says that, okay, if you languish my 2/4/4s, I still have a Fox alive that is going to continue chunking you down and it'll take most of your mana. If you don't have one of those 3 copies of
Ooh.
Languish, this game is going to be over for you.
Oh, that's so much land for Mangucci. That is super unfortunate for him. Top of the deck and not behaving. Finds an Omen of the Sea, but that's not going to cut it. And we're going to see a very quick game one go to Luis Salvatto on Boros Cycling. That's what you want to see.
That is absolutely what you want to see, and that's the game that Luis needed it in. Now he gets to take out some of his less great cards, might consider taking out some of the removal, and Sweltering Suns, get out of there. You're not looking for
No,
cycle 3 in this matchup.
no, no. I would just like to point out that there's a medium pig in Salvatto's sideboard too. So secretly a Naya deck, but we won't tell the cyclers. So
Yeah, it does have access to some Yasharns, making sure that it is a possibility. We see those shelter thickets in his mana base, in addition to some pathways, giving him a few sneaky sources of green should he need them without really harming the deck. The deck is looking for extra cycle lands probably anyways, so it
Mhm.
doesn't really mind having a few red green sources that can give him some cycles. So hey, I think that's another way that Luis is trying to say, I want a deck that is good against the field.
Yeah, and he did even say in his questionnaire that it's very difficult to find the best deck in the format. I mean, Historic has been quite varied, just from my experience playing it. You hardly ever play the same deck back to back, and it's that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we do have a large representation of Jund in the field today, but as soon as you go down from that, there's a whole lot of other decks in the scrum beneath it. So, yes, you're about 30% in the field to play against Jund, but that means you're more favored than not to play against a non Jund deck in any given round.
All right, here we go. Game number 2. Can Luis pick up a quick 2-0 here against the 2019 Mythic Invitational champion? Let's see what he can get up to here.
With this draw, he may just be able to turn one Fox, having a hollow one waiting. This is pretty explosive already from Luis. We see 2 copies of Ether Gust in Andrea's hand, which, yes, they are an
Oof.
answer to that reptilian reflection that Luis has, but not doing anything against Hollow One or Flourishing Fox.
Oh my goodness, another one. Oh boy, this
Oh.
might be like what you mentioned, Money, just being able to cycle, cycle, cycle. Hey, I have 2/4/4s for free. This is nice.
Yeah, I think really for Luis, all he needs, I think, is just, yeah, play the Forgotten Cave this turn, play the Pathway next turn, and what you need is 3 cycles to get those Hollow Ones into play for free.
But Mengucci
Oh my
has found
goodness.
Languish, which will be able to take care of them. A third one? What?
Okay, so if
Oh
Luis
boy.
finds the third 1 mana cycler here and plays all 3 Hollow Ones, Andrea would just need to find an untapped land to languish the board away.
Oh my goodness. That'll be another achievement unlocked. Okay, we'll just have 777 rock up again on screen.
All right, no 1 mana cycler means that the triple Hollow One Dream is gone. He is able to deploy 1 here if he would like, or just go for the Flameblade Adept. This may actually work out in his favor if Andrea does
Mm-hmm.
find the land for the Languish, but if Andrea doesn't, then
Oof.
Luis would have just had the game essentially in
Oh
that
man, that
position.
would have been so cool. Unfortunately, no fourth land there for Andrea, having the opposite problem this time around, where he's not finding his lands when he needs them. Does find an Eliminate to deal with the Flourishing Fox, but still has a problem of 3 Hollow
Oh,
Ones, and now a hasty little
this is
5/4
game.
dinosaur.
This is 14 damage.
What?
You don't need the card draw from the healer to trigger. That's 14 damage. The reptilian reflection you see Luis Salvatto just make a little cutting motion and says no, and that is the match.